All right, CNT125, Security and Design Lab. We just got done with our planning up here with our subnets and planning out our network map. What I did was I did a quick screen capture of my, oh doggone it, get back here. I did a quick screen capture of my lab map, so I have that handy. I'm leaving that handy so I don't have to keep scrolling back and forth. I took a minute and cabled up my network. And again, I paid very careful attention to, in this case, I'm using the 4221. I'm using my gigabit 000 port and connecting to my switch on the Fast Ethernet 24 port. And I triple check that to make sure we're good. I also connected a straight through cable from the router into the ISP, one of the hack internet ports. Again, we're using straight through everywhere on this because we have a router to a switch. They're unlike. And this router is actually connecting to a switch port. That's where it's going. So that's another straight through cable. I double checked those settings, or those ports, and I made sure I'm taking the left PC in my table. I'm going to make that the VLAN 10 PC, and the right PC in my table, I'm making my VLAN 20. So I cabled these into port 1 and I think 7. I think I'm using port 1 and 7 just because they're on the top row. Port 1 on this guy, port 7 on this guy. All right. I'm then going to console into the switch and the router and do some basic config. When I first connect in, make sure there's no config. So do your show run, do your show VLAN. If by chance you see any config behind, scroll to the end of the lab. I'll do it down here real quick. Scroll down here to the end of the lab. And here is our cleanup commands. Do this on your switch. And you're actually going to do a reload command when you're done with this. Do a reload, and that'll reboot it and clear it off. I will plug into my router and do the same thing. I will check all this. If there's any config, check it. And when you're done after the erase start, do a reload. That'll reboot the router so it comes up clean for you. Okay? You don't want to try to work on this when there's already previous config. That's a big headache. So I've connected to my switch, and I'm going to do my initial config on my switch. So I'm going to give it a name, and this is where keeping my map is handy. Oh, knock it off. I keep clicking the wrong thing here, and it moves on to like the next file in there. There we go. Okay. I'm going to give this a name, so config T. We're going to do host name, and I think we're calling this guy ACL switch. Yeah, ACL switch. So I know it's for this part of the lab. I'm then going to give it an IP, so interface VLAN 1. And again, all these commands should be pretty familiar now after the lab midterm. I'm going to use the IP address I have marked out here. Remember, the router is 01, so the switch will be 02. IP address 192.168.02, followed by my subnet mask. We'll do a no shutdown on this, so it becomes an active IP. We'll do exit, and now we need our VLANs. So we need VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. So we're going to say VLAN 10, name, I think we called this one employee, yes, employee, exit, VLAN 20, name, I think we're saying visitor on this one, TUR, yes, we're saying visitor right there. Excellent. We now need to assign our port ranges to those VLANs. So interface range, FA0/125, that's the first one. Switch port access VLAN 10, exit. We're going to do range of 6 to 10. We're going to do switch port access VLAN 20. So that is my VLANs on my first handful of ports. We cannot forget about our trunk port here. So exit. Interface Fast Ethernet 0/24, switch port, mode, trunk. Exit, exit, and we're going to do a show run, and we're going to make sure these things look right. There's the name. First 5 ports are VLAN 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, VLAN 10. Next 10 ports, 6 to 10, are VLAN 20, and they are excellent. Down here under port 24, we should see trunking. And then I should see my IP address here. Good. Once I've done that, scrolling down here, I'm now going to add some new config. This is all stuff that was from the midterm, so hopefully you did all that from memory. We're now going to add some new config. We're going to add a little bit more security onto this than we did the last lab. We're now going to put a password on the console port. Now, before I even dig into this, if I put a password on the console port, for you to be able to get into the switch and configure it, you need this password. So that's a level of security. The flip side of this is, as an admin, if I configure this wrong, if I configure a weird password in here that nobody knows, nobody can get into the switch to fix it. So you have to do some extreme caution when setting a password on the console port, because you can flat out lock yourself out of the switch and cause yourself a massive headache. In the lab room, you're going to cause yourself a headache because it's going to take a while for Mr. Brown to reset your password, and most likely all your config is going to go away. That's typically the piece of this repair, if you will. Your configuration goes away and you start over. So you're going to lose significant time in the lab room if you set a password in here that nobody knows or you made a typo on. So that's always saying here, check for typos, slow down, use caution. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set a password on here that when anybody tries to console and plug a blue console cable in from their laptop to get into the switch, they need a password just to get in. So we are going to do line con 0. That's line console 0. Right here changes to line. We're going to say password Cisco, and I'm going to double check. I'm not hitting the enter key right away. I'm double checking. Did I spell it correctly? Did I put spaces out here? Because if I put spaces out here, that becomes part of the password. I need to make sure I don't do that. And once I've triple checked it, then I'll hit the enter key. And I'm going to quick look here because it's an easy fix right now. If I happen to do a typo, I just go in here and I fix it. CISCO. Okay, go. I'll fix it. Okay, good. It's an easy fix now. Once you exit out and come back in, if it's wrong, you have a big problem in your hands to fix that. So make sure you have it right. We're then going to tell it, hey, when the person goes to log in, prompt them for, please plug a password in. So now we're going to do exit. And I'm also going to set my enable password. We've done that previously. Again, you can lock yourself out of admin level if you don't do this carefully. So we need to do enable secret class. Again, I'm setting the enable password to class, and the word secret means encrypted. So please set the enable password, encrypt it, and set it to the whatever this is plugged in here. Well, we use class. That is our default password in here, because again, if somebody leaves config on, we can get in and fix it so the next student in lab can actually work on it. So before hitting enter, double check, make sure there's no extra spaces, because spaces become part of the password. Okay, make sure it's correct. And hit your enter. And again, if there's anything wrong, look at it now. You can up arrow and fix it right now while you're here. Now I've set an enable password, so somebody needs to have this password to get to the admin level. And I've also set a password that when somebody tries to console in, they need this password just to get into the switch. So what I can do now, I'll do another exit. I can do a show run. When I do a show run, there's the enable password encrypted. I'm going to keep going. There's all my VLAN config. There's my IP config. And then this is my console password of Cisco. So if I do an exit right now and I hit the enter key, it's going to say, hey, what's the password? Well, it's Cisco that I just set. Enable. If I do enable, it's like, what's the password? Well, class. Okay. So I now have 2 levels of password on my switch to get in and work on it. This is a lot better security than we've used before. Now, obviously, in real life, you're going to use much more secure passwords than what we're using here. But for a learning environment, we're using these so we can get in case somebody left a config behind. Okay? So in real life, you would use a lot more secure passwords. But methodology-wise, we are doing the proper method of setting a password on the console port, setting a password on enable mode. All right? So we'll also do a show VLAN while we're here. And we should see our employee and visitor VLANs all configured up. And we will do a copy, run, start on this guy as well. Our switch for this part of the lab is in good shape. I will come back on the next podcast and do our router.